In the world of Cyberpunk 2077, music reflects the ignorance and hedonism of race, violence, and knee-jerk liberalism that led to massive music sales during the 80s and 90s. The Rockaboy movement demonstrated an intensity of artistic commitment nearly unparalleled in human history. Some have achieved a great deal, others have not. The only reason that Rockaboys don't have a greater effect is probably an inability to stay alive long enough to achieve their goals. If the term Rockaboy defines the level of commitment involved in getting the message to the people, then the consensus is that the first Rockaboy would be James Manson. Manson is often considered the definitive rocker because his death in 1997 defined the term. Although Manson's career was considered by several commentators as mediocre at best, it can be argued that his real accomplishment was to expose the opposition of those in power to the Rockaboy ideal. Like many of the performers of the period, Manson was afraid to perform in America because of death threats by the military government. These threats, in fact, were one of the very issues being discussed at the Amnesty International concert, where Manson was killed by armed British security. His death galvanized a whole generation of people to become rockers in their own right. Following this event, one of the first groups to come out of the political closet was Justifiable Homicide. Their first album, released in 1998 and entitled Jury Trial, was a great success both commercially and as a Rockaboy statement. The message of Jury Trial was one of nostalgia, a real longing for the now defunct criminal justice system. Barry Mayung, the lead vocalist and songwriter, had lost a good part of his family to the military government, executed for what he considered trivial looting charges. It was more than 10 years before Justifiable Homicide released their second album. Those years were spent running from the government. Late in 1999, a group of militant Catholic rockers called the Watchmen released 2 albums, Sign of the Times and Revelation. The albums had strong political content and fabulous musicianship. Even the harshest critics agreed that the group was headed for stardom. Then in April of 2000, all 6 members of the band were tried in absentia for crimes against the government and were arrested 6 weeks later by the USMG, accused of treason, espionage, terrorism, transportation of illegal war material, and possession of controlled substances with intent to distribute. When apprehended instead of being executed, the members of the band were incarcerated at Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary, where they stayed for almost 13 years. Beginning with the Watchmen trial, the military government made sure that volatile rockers had short careers. Until they returned to civilian rule, no one was safe. The period between 1999 and 2009 is called the Lost Decade by many rocker historians. Though there were many powerful rockers in this period, their careers were short-lived. After the return to civilian government in 2008, the music scene virtually exploded, with Johnny Silverhand and Kerry Eurodyne leading the charge with Samurai. Since 2006, the Samurai released 6 albums. The band broke up in early 2008, with Silverhand and Eurodyne moving on to highly influential solo careers. Johnny Silverhand would literally become the definition of a rockaboy. The Lost 90s band Justifiable Homicide had been hiding out in Mexico City for almost 6 years. After tiring of the constant pursuit by thugs of the military government, the band had gone to work playing the rough crowds of construction workers. Mexico City was being rebuilt and a large portion of the workforce were nomads, so the band had a following. By 2011, the band was on a slow downward spiral. It was only a matter of time before they burned out. Former Samurai Bess Isis was in town doing a piece on the Nomad Underground. She was in the bar having a drink, talking with the band, when an emaciated 16-year-old kid walked into the bar and fell flat. Revived by Bess Isis, he told the story of 600,000 people marooned in South America. Some of them were trying to get out by walking almost 3,000 miles to get home. The story was well documented, and Bear Slices was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. The members of Justifiable Homicide stole 6 truckloads of perishables and supplies and went to meet the nomads who had begun the long walk. The band, and Isis as well, joined in the walk for 6 months. The band lived and worked with the nomads. 2 members died in the violent clashes along the way. These experiences went into Justifiable Homicide's second major label release, The Long Walk, released in January 2012. The album catapulted the band back into the limelight. However, the album also sparked the wrath of the new government. On April 13th, Johnny Silverhand inspired the Arasaka riot in Night City, in which 18 people died and 51 were wounded. The Watchmen were released from prison, having spent the last 5 years in Braindance. Their first new album was entitled Betrayed. It was considered a failure until 6 months later, when the entire band was assassinated by a Swiss solo who was rumoured to be a member of the Vatican secret police. The Sins were the first to use interface-controlled sampling and mixing live. The sounds of everything violent, from bone saws to the subsonic hum of AV engines, were in the mix. The first single, oddly enough, sung by the band's manager, the now famous promoter, Vampire Elton, Violent Hickey, set off a wave of killings wherever the band played. The band's look, half-chromed bodies with rippers and vampire implants, is still in vogue. The Sins' second album was released in 2015, entitled I Am the Machine. It clarified the philosophical points of techno-humanism. The album was much less openly violent, due to the entire band's intensive therapy. It was also a retrospective of the grind tech sound, a descendant of the 80s gothic, industrial and angst styles, all bled together and spat out against a wall of pain. In 2016, rockers moved back from preaching to protest. With the advent of nanotechnology, Stranger Inside Me, a band specifically targeted to the anti-biotech audience, released the disc Humanity. Songs like Bright White Smile, Every Fourth Child, and Helix told the real story. Biotech takes away from our humanity and makes us something else. As a result, some people still won't eat government-inspected kibble. During their 2017 American tour, all 4 members were killed. By April of 2018, DMS, the first commercial braindance label, released the debut disc of Kid Rock, a 14-year-old child prodigy. Legend has it that Kid Rock was found wandering the research complex at DMS Manhattan. He asked to be a rocker and said he could operate an Omnimax. When Kill Webster, DMS's head tech, hooked him up, the kid made history. The disc is only 18 minutes long, but the intensity is unparalleled. All 18 minutes are one song, entitled Kid Rock's Bleeding Soul. Thank you for chipping in.